So today on EmpowerU, we've always reached out to people to see, what ideas they have for us. And one idea that, people keep sharing or suggestion that they have is people want to know, since you, Chris, have worked with Bob Proctor over the years, they obviously want to know, the secrets that Bob Proctor, that secret sauce that he had. And maybe we can talk about the movie The Secret, which for me was, and this goes back almost 20 years.
A long time ago, yeah.
One of the first, I'd say, visuals that I had of how to really start to implement changes in my life and really focus on the law of attraction. However, it's not as simple as saying, okay, I'm going to think of something and put it out there and it's going to come back to me. So I think in your work with Bob, he alluded and shared with you more details about how to manifest. So let's talk about that today.
Yeah, for sure. Even just meeting him, I know you were kind of like a student of his stuff. I actually was not. I was invited to a seminar in Toronto, and I went in, and I was there for a network marketing presentation, which Bob and his wife were actually presented.
Okay.
So I didn't really know him at all at that time. I just walked in, I saw this old guy talking about the law of attraction. I'm like, okay, this seems very foo-foo to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very science-based trainer guy, that's my world. And then as I got to learn a little bit about who he was and realize man, this guy has a very big reach and impact, maybe I should look a little bit more like who this guy really is. And that got me diving into the whole world of personal growth and development. I'd never read a book about, law of attraction or positive thinking or any of that stuff at that time. Now, before that, obviously I was working with athletes and stuff like that. So we did do some psychology training, but not to the level of what he did, right? Mm-hmm. And when I first met him, my family was like, oh my God, he's from the movie The Secret. And that's when I watched that movie and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. All these people kind of just visualize what they want and it shows up.
And poof,
magic happens. And I was quick to learn that's actually not true. And Bob actually was very good at explaining that at his seminars, even with me in private, about how that movie was one small little speck of all the universal laws in terms of how things work and how you track things. And the biggest takeaway from that movie, he told me, was he was actually, I think it was Iceland at the time. He wasn't supposed to be in Toronto where this lady wanted to film, and Toronto was the lady who created The Secret, so it wasn't Bob's thing, it was hers, and she wanted to interview him, and actually she told me that she was actually across the street at the hotel in Iceland at the same time that he was there. So just law of attraction, right? It's supposed to happen. So he goes, you show up at our hotel and just a stool and a pop-up green screen, and that's how we filmed The Secret. They just asked me questions and I answered them, and I didn't think anything of it, and then boom, it became very big. And ever since then, he really kind of talked a lot about his role in that movie and what came about of it. But the biggest thing he said with the law of attraction is, yes, you have to feel the emotions and fixate or focus on them, but you can't just wishfully think things into existence. He goes, if I could sit there and close my eyes and be like, I want a Bugatti, and it showed up, that'd be crazy, but no one on the face of the planet has ever done that. So he goes, you have to understand that thinking is one thing, but then the work ethic is the second. And I would say out of the top three things, that was the one thing I'd noticed working with him, and even at his age, because I spent 5 years with him, to see that. Now people are like, okay, how close were you with him? Because I know a lot of people in the internet world all over the place, oh, I've been to a seminar, I've gone to a couple of his lectures. No, I was actually at his house every day. At Christmas one year, I didn't really have a good year, and he invited me to his house for Christmas. So I spent Christmas with his family. I've traveled with him. I worked out of his home with him. It was just one-on-one with me and him, and also at big stages as well. And so through that, I got to see behind the scenes of how does he operate? Is he a person that says one thing on camera on stage and then does the completely opposite? And I learned quickly that's not the case. When I first started working with him, his one thing he said to me was, if I asked you for something, Chris, I wanted it yesterday. Mm-hmm. And he worked like that. He'd be up at 5 a.m, phone call. We'd film maybe 5 or 10 different videos. He'd go right to 11 o'clock at night and start the next day. And he was always pushing the envelope moving forward, checking in with his sales team, checking in with his business, calling his clients. So there's never a time I saw him being really idle and just wishful thinking. He always found a way to kind of pivot and move in a strong direction.
Well, let's talk about that work ethic, because that's the thing. So, how the law of attraction works is you think of something within your realm of desire that you want, and then you envision it and you feel the emotional state that experience will bring you. Now, like you said, there's a buffer of time. You can't just wish for something and then it pops up. So in that buffer of time, I think that's where, people think, okay, I turn on the law of attraction, ask for something, and then I turn the switch off. But it doesn't work like that. So in that buffer of time, how you choose to show up and take those action steps in your work ethic, like you said, Bob didn't just wish about it. He would show up every day and work his butt off to get to, there's that diligence and vigilance in working. And I think that that's important, because when we're waiting in that buffer of time, that's when we lose the faith of what we've asked for. And the thing is, soon as you stop believing in what you've asked for in that buffer of time and you stop showing up, you're literally, the law of attraction is always in place. So if you stop showing up in that buffer of time, the universe is giving you exactly what you're asking for, which is I've given up. And you're looking at, well, it's not happening and it's not happening. And the minute you start to pay attention at the fact that it's not happening, then that's what you're starting to attract because you focused on luck. And so you start to get more luck. And Bob knew that he had to continue. He asked for something and he had to meet that ask halfway by showing up every single day until it appeared in front of him and he got to experience it. And I think that's where people lose themselves in the law of attraction, is in that buffer of time. They're not seeing the things that they've asked for manifest. They're seeing everything but that. And then it's easy to get focused on those things happening, saying, this isn't what I asked for.
Yeah.
But the minute you pay attention to the lack of, you start to attract the lack of. So you almost need to have that work ethic, like you said, that discipline of, no, I've asked for this. And every day until it shows up, I'm going to meet it halfway and act in a way that's going to basically create the momentum to the law of attraction and the good things that I want to come in. And I'm not, I'll notice these things that are happening that I don't like, but I'm not going to get stuck on them and focus on them, because then you get stuck in that place of desire. And then even that place of shame and guilt when it doesn't work out, and you start to attract more of that, right? So you have to transition from that desire place into a place of courage and neutrality, where you become impartial, whether or not it happens or not, but you're showing up. And you know that the universe is going to meet you halfway when you do show up. It's the minute that I think people drop that work ethic and think, well, I'll just wish and sit around and wait for it to happen. Doesn't work that way, because when you're sitting around, you're going to get more reasons to sit around. That's the law of attraction.
And it happens like that. And I think most people get caught in that. And even me, like I remember when I first started working with him, I had created a very large business in a very short period of time. I think he told me at the time, what I did in 3 weeks took the average person 3 years. So he goes, it's crazy. You did a lot of activity very quickly. But no one knows the side story of this. So like, oh, Chris crushed it. The next 4 months, I actually lost all of that business and I was in a deficit. And I remember going to Bob, like, I'm quitting. Like, this is too hard. I'm going to go back to teaching and training. Like, this is not going to work for me. And he says, again, that's your old paradigm stepping in. Like, if you did it once, you could do it again. But what got you there? And I'm like, I set a goal. I was fixated on it. And he goes, you got to work. So he goes, here's what I would suggest you do now. And he coached everyone in everything. Didn't matter if it was business, health, and it's very simple things. He goes, okay, if it's business for you, pull up your calendar right now. Let's see in the last 2 weeks how many appointments and meetings you had to present your business opportunity. And I had sat with him and I'm like, I don't know. I pull it up. I had like 2 or 3 meetings. He goes, if your goal is to have $1 million business and you're in 2 meetings a week, how the hell are you think you're going to get there? There's no magic pixie dust I'm going to tell you that's going to move there. He's very like that with me. Like, no, this is not acceptable. You need to be having at least 2 to 3 presentations a day. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. He goes, well, if you knew how to do it, you'd already be doing it. That's the whole point of this, Chris, is to get you to think, how are you going to do that? Mm-hmm. And so he goes, well, if you talk to 10 people about this, you maybe get 1 or 2 interested. Maybe you need to talk to 20. Maybe you talk to 50. Shit, Chris, maybe you need to talk to 100 people today. Mm-hmm. I don't care how many people you need to reach out or do network with, but you need to be doing that. And if you did that for the next 90 days, not only would you recoup your business yet, you'd explode. And sure enough, 9 months later of doing this activity, I was in the condo I wanted, the car I wanted, traveling the world with him in a private jet. All because he said, just don't miss that, mm-hmm. right? It's the same thing with fitness. Like, if you track your nutrition, if you go to the gym, mm-hmm. you're not going to see results in the beginning, but over time, you do. And so it's the same thing on anything that it is you desire and want. You have to get into that work ethic mentality and not just sit around and hope for something magical to happen. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And you made a good point, even like physically, when we look at when we're on a path of, let's say, getting healthier or, shaping our body transition, you really have to go at it every day. And of course, like you see that all the time with clients, they're like, oh, I've been doing this for a month and I don't see any results. And then if you keep at it for a certain period of time, it's like all of a sudden you wake up and there's the results you've been waiting for, but you can't get there if you stop and you start to go into a place of guilt and shame and like, this isn't working. This is because you're going to get more of that. And literally, I mean, we call it karma. Whatever energy you put out, good or bad, is what you get back. And often, people are already susceptible to their own karma. Often we'll even say to people, oh, well, that's their karma. I've learned anytime you wish karma upon people, you put yourself in a lower paradigm because you're using it to harm or shame and saying, well, you're going to get yours back. But ultimately, everyone already energetically, and this is proven even in science, whatever energy, which can be measured, you put out, you do get that back. But again, there is a buffer in time. So you have to be willing to show up even when you're not, they say the hardest work is the work when no one's watching, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's hard because I mean, you and I both, like, we've experienced that where you're working every day, you're showing up, and yet you're not seeing the results of what you want. But we both know that if you continue through that hard challenge and that big hill that you have to climb, once you get to the top, you realize, okay, it does work, but you have to keep at it.
Keep going. So I got it tattooed on me, right? Just keep going. And I would say the next thing that really Bob talked about was the mindset of that journey, because people are like, well, okay, sure, Chris, I can go now and do what you said, and do those 2 meetings a day and doing the workout, but I don't really want to do that. I don't feel good about it. Well, if you go on it that way and you don't feel good about it, you're not going to get the result, unfortunately. You have to get your mind fixated. And so when I worked with Bob, I remember this one time, there was a guy that he was coaching like me in the same business, and that individual did something, we're not going to talk about it on camera, but pretty much he just took a lot of our business and went to a competitor and lied about a bunch of stuff. And I remember Bob in that moment, he was sitting at his desk, and I never seen him really get agitated, but he was really agitated at the time because he really invested in this person. And I saw it too. I was with him every day, so I saw it. And I remember him like sending the email out, letting everyone know like this person's no longer working, and then just like he threw it. And then I remember that person had gone live on Instagram. He was a young guy, and he was talking about like Bob and stuff. And I'm like, hey, like this guy is talking about it. He goes, that guy's dead to me. I'm like, whoa, like that sounds. She goes, no, not like literally dead, but in my mind is what I'm trying to say. It's dead to me. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I addressed it. I give him my piece, and I'm back focused on what I'm doing because I can't be distracted that way. And the same thing with business when I used to compare him sometimes. I'd be like, yo, Tony Robbins is doing an event the same weekend as you. He had more people, or this guy, that. And I'm like, we should look at that. And he goes, I don't look sideways, right? I acknowledge it. Okay, there's a shiny thing there. That's cool. That's good for you. I'm going to continue my path because this is my path. And not going to let anyone else get in my way of thinking. And so no matter what was going on, whether it's a bad thing in his life or a positive thing, he was always very neutral. He acknowledged those feelings, but he didn't hold on to them too long. What we do is something doesn't go right. Like, let's just say we did a meeting, it didn't go our way, we didn't close a deal, and you could be sitting around all day like, man, I don't know what he did wrong, the person's an idiot, and you just focus. He's like, why? Why are you going to spend any energy doing that? Let it go, move.
Well, it takes you out of your lane, right? And we see that like anytime you see even people who are racers, the minute you take your eyes off your lane and you look at your competitors, you lose your momentum instantly, right? And so that's the hard part. And it sounds like Bob had a way of creating boundaries where for himself, where it's like, no, I apply myself here, and now I put the blinders on and I'm staying focused in my lane. And that's the hardest thing, because I find when you're in a place where potentially you're having a little bit of anxiety about the future and you're seeing other people that are succeeding in the way that you want to succeed, it's hard to not hyper focus on them. And we see a lot of envy and a lot of jealousy, which really brings you down to a lower paradigm when you're in that. And the thing is, everyone's on their own journey. You don't know what that person has put out to get what they, And
what does it matter? How does it affect your life, right? That person could be gone tomorrow, then you spent all that time focused on them. How? Your time is limited.
And it's hard because I often see a lot of people that follow my path. If we're doing a podcast and someone starts doing a podcast, or I focus on a certain area, then I see them starting focus. And it is easy to get distracted by that because it's like, whoa. But one thing I've learned is that when you're on the right path, you're going to have a lot of people follow you.
I see it even with me. Like I came to Sudbury, I started filming a lot more in the gym. I started filming companies, right? And that's my little side thing I'm working on. And now I have all these new competitors showing up. Matter of fact, two actually reached out last week, said, I hope I don't step on your toes. You inspired me to make videos. I bought a camera. I'm going to start shooting content for businesses in Sudbury. Hope it doesn't make you get mad. I'm like, I'm never mad on that. Like, that's cool. Do it.
Yeah.
Cool that you saw me do it, and now that's getting you to do it. And I've seen it happen with lots of people in my life, and I always look at it as a good thing, right? And so I don't have that thinking, but most people, they'd be very jealous or envious. And I've even consulted some businesses in the area where they're like, oh, I don't like how that guy opened up that business. And I'm like, well, why? How does it affect you? Not at all. Like, let them do what they're going to do. If you're that good, you'll be fine.
Well, one lesson I got from Bob, so the Size and Getting Rich was a program that I remember, in one of my the hardest times, I used to listen to that. Like I'd be mowing the lawn, I'd put my headphones on and I would just listen to it, whether it was even subconscious, I listened to it so many times. And one thing that Bob spoke to was that competitive plane. And he's like, you know what? There's enough pie to go around. So there's no more pieces in this pie, make a new pie. And whenever you're in that competitive realm, you are really in a place of pride, you're in a place of desire, you're in a place of fear. And that's the lower paradigm. The minute you start to become more creative and think of, oh, cool, all these people are obviously inspired by what I'm doing. Now, how do I start to create something that's my own and continue in my lane? That's when you have the most success, because you're operating in a positive realm versus focusing on the things that people are taking from you. well, that's fine. People can keep taking ideas and I'm just going to continue to create more ideas. And it inspires me to do more because as much as I may not get acknowledgement or recognition for the ideas that people are taking, to me, that's still an inspiration because I'm clearly doing the right stuff. I mean, we experienced that when we started the podcast where people were trying to get involved and in ways that weren't really positive. And we thought, hey, that means, we're doing something great. Because the minute you're doing something that people are paying attention to, keep doing it and do it in the way that you feel best. And you notice the people, but don't hyper focus on what people are doing. Focus on what you're capable of doing. Because again, how you show up is what you can control. And Bob knew that. He knew he can control these other people and what they were doing. So why give them your energy? And you're literally doing that. When you focus on the outside world, you give your energy away versus looking at that and say, hey, if people are inspired by me, I'm going to inspire myself and I'm going to continue to create this great stuff and know that it's coming from a place of good. And that's the important part, because the minute you come from a lower paradigm, you're going to get back that lower paradigm. When you come from the higher paradigm, you're going to get back that higher paradigm. You have to stick with it and be consistent, because the minute you dip into the lower, you're going to get that. The minute you go back to the higher, well, you'll get a little bit of that too. But if you want to be consistent in attracting good stuff in your life, you have to have that work ethic and that mindset that Bob had, and just stay focused on what you're doing, stay in your lane, and just know there's an abundance out there. If people are taking your ideas, think of more ideas and make them your own. It's really that simple.
It's always going to be the case. And that was the last thing I'll say too, is like Bob used to be a big advocate of gratitude. He's like, be grateful that you have competition. That forces you to be better. Be grateful of everything that's going on. And if you're not in a state of gratitude, you're really going to have a tough time building anything, right? In his company, when I was there, they would meet with some very successful CEOs in the States and, millionaires and billionaires of different companies. And it's crazy. They would come to a seminar and they're like in a tough spot, whether they're like, they can't scale anymore, they're overworked. And we would sit down with them and like, they'd look at Bob and his partner, Sandy, and they'd be like, that's the advice you had for me? And he'd usually be like, well, you guys are very grateful. Like, what do you mean? And so he would like show them, like, you're not showing gratitude for yourself, people around you. And that's why you're in this mental block. So what you're going to do is you're going to go home, and you maybe do this too, write down 5 or 10 things you're grateful for, but really feel these things and do it every single day for 90 days. He goes, you start your morning with that, you end your day with that, and that's going to allow you to really feel differently because it's in the emotion. Just like when we go back to the beginning with The Secret, he told me the real secret's written in sand at the end of the movie. Now, it's not in a new version of the movie, it was in the older one, but they took things out, and certain people were in it they took out as well, which no one really knows about. But he told me the behind-the-scenes stuff. But he goes, in the sand, they write, feel good. He goes, you're going to watch the movie, just look for that part, because that's really what it is. And so how do you feel good? Well, it's all the stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
By taking action, having the right mindset around it, and then expressing gratitude as often as possible. And sure enough, you can follow that path. Eventually, you will end up where you want it to be.
Well, that's it. And again, like, to feel good, you have to make sure that you take care and let go of all the negative feelings. You can't just like turn on a switch and say, hey, I'm going to feel good today. So the secret almost comes after people have done the work in healing their trauma, feeling their negative emotions, letting them go, because everything is a polar opposite and everything's relative, right? You can't feel joy if you haven't felt anger. So you have to release those emotions so then you can decide to feel happy. And I would say anytime you experience anything that is taking you off track, like you said, reach to gratitude, because when you're in a state of gratitude, you're in a higher realm. And so be grateful for the people that are inspired by your ideas. Be grateful for, even if you don't see the results, be grateful for where you're at, because you're on the right track. But if you don't acknowledge that gratitude and you don't acknowledge where you're at, you won't get to where you want to be. And so I think gratitude is probably the key, because even if you haven't done the trauma work and felt the negative feelings, anyone at any point in time has the capacity to sit there and look at the things in your life that you can be grateful for. That is an immediate way to shift you, even if you haven't done the real work and felt the lower paradigm. So, take a lesson from Bob, and thank you, Chris, for sharing those important lessons, because those are the pieces that I think we often miss. So when you're on that path and you've asked for something, reach to gratitude when you're struggling. And I know it's hard when you're having a rough day, but do your best and get a piece of paper and just start writing down the things that you can be grateful for in that moment. And that will continue the momentum of you showing up and meeting the universe halfway and attracting what it is that you do want. Just remember, the minute you focus on the things you don't want, that's fine. Notice it and then bring yourself back to gratitude, because that's the best way to continue along the path of success. So I hope this helped you, and I hope Chris's secret of the secrets from Bob will also help you, because these are the things that have helped us and continue to help us as we go through our life's journey as well. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.